Something felt wrong the moment I stepped out that morning. The wind was too still. The birds were too quiet. And deep down, I knew nature was trying to tell me something. Name's Emmett Granger, 76 years old, and I've spent my whole life patrolling the backcountry of Wyoming's Wind River Range. Folks around here call me the last guardian, but to me, I'm just an old man who still cares too damn much about the wild things. I've fought off poachers, wildfires, and storms. But what I saw yesterday, out there by the ridge, wasn't anything I'd ever trained for. If you've ever felt that nature holds secrets we barely understand, stick with me. Subscribe to the channel, and let's uncover the truth that changed everything I thought I knew. I was just about halfway down the ridge trail when I saw the buzzards circling. Not unusual out here. Things die in the wild all the time. But this was different. They weren't swarming like they usually do over a carcass. They were quiet, gliding in slow, deliberate loops, like they were watching, not feeding. Curious, I pulled the truck over and grabbed my old binoculars. Same pair I've had since the Nixon era. What I saw chilled me. Down near the creek bed, something was limping through the brush. Big, heavy, slow. At first I thought it was a bear, but the shape wasn't right. Then it stepped into the sunlight, and my breath caught. It was a bull elk, but half its antlers were gone, and there was a deep gash running down its flank like it had been clawed. I'd seen plenty of injuries before, but this one looked fresh. And something about the way that elk moved, it wasn't just wounded, it was terrified. Now, I've been out in these woods long enough to trust my gut. And right then, my gut told me this elk wasn't running from a fight. It was running from something it couldn't escape. And for the first time in years, I felt it too. That low, crawling dread that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't the only one patrolling these woods anymore. I knew better than to go charging down into a thicket without backup, especially with an injured animal nearby. But something in me said I had to see, so I eased my way down the slope, boots crunching on dry pine needles, keeping my breath steady and my eyes scanning. Every step felt heavier than the last, like the air itself was warning me. When I reached the creek bed, the elk was gone, but the ground told its story. Blood in thick droplets, deep tracks in the mud, and something else. Something that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Claw marks, not bear. I've seen those. Not mountain lion either. The spacing was too wide, too deep. Whatever made those gashes had size and rage. My mind raced through every possibility I'd learned over the decades, but nothing fit. No animal in this region makes tracks like that. And then I saw it, half buried in the mud beside a shattered log. A fragment of fur stuck to the bark, dark and coarse like nothing I'd ever collected before. I took out my field pouch, sealed it, and backed away, real slow. This wasn't just an injured elk fleeing a predator. Something had hunted it, driven it past the point of instinct. And now, that something was still out there. I may be old, but I've learned to listen when the forest speaks. And today, it was screaming. I started to back up the ridge, heart thumping louder than it should have for a man who's climbed these trails 1,000 times. I tried to shake it off. Maybe it was just the heat, or my age catching up. But deep down, I knew better. The forest had gone quiet. Too quiet. No bird song, no rustling leaves. Just that eerie kind of silence that presses against your eardrums like a held breath. Then I heard it. A low growl. Deep, guttural, and close. I froze. Whatever it was watching me. I could feel it, like a weight pressing between my shoulders. My hand went to my hip, brushing against the old revolver I hadn't fired in years. Truth be told, I wasn't even sure if the thing would go off. But I wasn't about to find out. I backed up slowly, boots sliding in the loose dirt. My eyes scanned the tree line, and that's when I saw it. Just for a second. A silhouette. Massive, lurking between the trees. Too tall for a bear. Too broad for a wolf. And too quiet for anything I'd ever known. I didn't run. Not because I wasn't scared, but because the rules out here are simple. If you run, you're prey. So I kept walking, calm, steady, praying that whatever was behind me wasn't ready to make a move yet. I made it back to the truck, shut the door, and just sat there, hands trembling against the steering wheel. It wasn't fear exactly. It was something older, deeper, like I'd brushed up against a truth the forest didn't want me to know. I turned the ignition. The engine coughed once, twice, then stalled. Of course it did. There I was, an old man with a half-charged radio, a useless revolver, and something ancient breathing down my neck. For a second, I thought about grabbing my rifle from the back, but then I paused because something moved in the rearview mirror. I looked up and saw it, a pair of golden eyes, staring through the trees, not angry, not even wild, just watching, calm, too calm. And in that moment, I wasn't 76. I wasn't the last guardian. I was a boy again, lost in the woods behind my father's farm, listening to the wind and wondering if it carried secrets. I blinked, and the eyes were gone. Whatever it was, it could have taken me, but it didn't. It chose not to. That shook me more than if it had attacked, because that meant it knew. It was aware. And maybe it remembered me. Or worse, maybe it was waiting for something I hadn't yet done. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the porch with a mug of black coffee, listening to the coyotes cry across the valley. My old bones ached, but it wasn't age keeping me up. It was memory. Or maybe guilt. You see, back in 1991, I responded to a report near Dry Creek. Cattle torn apart, no tracks, just blood and silence. Locals blamed wolves. Officials shrugged, but I saw the claw marks, same as yesterday. And back then, I chose to stay quiet. Why? Because I was scared, not of the creature, but of what it meant. That something existed in these woods I couldn't explain, couldn't track, couldn't stop. And if I admitted that, what good was my badge? But now, 3 decades later, those eyes, they felt familiar. Not just instinctually, but personally. Like they'd known me, watched me, waited. Maybe it's nonsense. Maybe I'm just an old man chasing ghosts. But part of me wonders, what if it spared me not out of mercy, but recognition? I walked inside, opened the old metal lockbox under my bed, and pulled out the only piece of evidence I'd kept from that day. A photo, blurry, taken by a rancher, before he disappeared. A shadow with eyes, same color as yesterday. If that creature's back, then maybe it never really left. By morning, I'd made up my mind. If that thing was back, if it truly never left, then I couldn't keep quiet again. Not this time. Not when the woods were changing. And something older than fear was waking up. I drove out to the Shoshone Ridge, where the old ranger station used to be. The place was abandoned now. Just creaky floorboards, a rusted radio, and dusty maps pinned to the wall. But it still held what I needed. The field logs from the 90s. Scribbled notes from long-retired men who'd seen things but never spoke aloud. I flipped through them with trembling fingers, and there it was. April 18th, 1991. Unidentified tracks. Elk herd scattered. Eyeshine reported at dusk. Patrol aborted. No names. No follow-up. Just silence. I stepped outside, wind brushing against my face like an old friend trying to warn me. The tree line swayed gently, but I saw it again. Those golden eyes, just beyond the aspen grove. Watching, not hiding, not hunting. Just there. I didn't reach for my gun. I raised my voice instead. "I remember you," I said aloud, "and I know you remember me." The wind stopped. For a heartbeat, the forest stood still. Then the eyes blinked once and vanished. Whatever this was, it wanted something. Not blood, not revenge, but maybe an answer. And I knew, deep down, I was the only one left who could give it. By morning, I'd made up my mind. If that thing was back, if it truly never left, then I couldn't keep quiet again. Not this time. Not when the woods were changing. And something older than fear was waking up. I drove out to the Shoshone Ridge, where the old ranger station used to be. The place was abandoned now. Just creaky floorboards, a rusted radio, and dusty maps pinned to the wall. But it still held what I needed. The field logs from the 90s, scribbled notes from long-retired men who'd seen things but never spoke aloud. I flipped through them with trembling fingers, and there it was. April 18th, 1991. Unidentified tracks. Elk herd scattered. Eyeshine reported at dusk. Patrol aborted. No names. No follow-up. Just silence. I stepped outside, wind brushing against my face like an old friend trying to warn me. The tree line swayed gently, but I saw it again. Those golden eyes, just beyond the aspen grove. Watching, not hiding, not hunting. Just there. I didn't reach for my gun. I raised my voice instead. "I remember you," I said aloud, "and I know you remember me." The wind stopped. For a heartbeat, the forest stood still. Then the eyes blinked once and vanished. Whatever this was, it wanted something. Not blood, not revenge, but maybe an answer. And I knew, deep down, I was the only one left who could give it. The next morning, I packed light. Just my old field bag, a thermos of coffee, and the charcoal sketch Thomas had given me. I left my rifle behind. Whatever this was, I wasn't meeting it with bullets. I took the northern trail through Broken Pine Valley, the same path I used to patrol before they shut down that section of the preserve. The forest there felt older, untouched, like it still remembered the world before roads and radios. As I walked deeper in, the air grew still. No birds, no breeze, just the sound of my boots pressing into earth that hadn't felt man's weight in years. Then, ahead, beneath a crooked cottonwood, I saw it. Not the creature, but something far stranger. A ring of elk antlers, arranged in a perfect circle around a patch of scorched soil. In the center sat a stone, smooth, marked with symbols I didn't recognize, but somehow understood. I stepped into the circle. My chest tightened. Not with fear, but recognition. This was a place of memory, of passage. Then I heard it, behind me. Not footsteps, not growls, just breathing. Slow, steady, heavy. I turned, and there it was, not quite animal, not quite spirit. Eyes like gold, set in shadow, massive, silent. It didn't move. Neither did I, because suddenly I understood. This wasn't a warning. It was a summons. We stared at each other for what felt like hours. Me, an old man with nothing left to prove. It, a force older than anything I could name. Then it blinked, slowly, deliberately, like it was giving me permission. I stepped closer. Not out of courage, but out of understanding. My whole life I thought I was protecting the land. But maybe the land had been watching me all along. Suddenly the air shifted, the circle of antlers trembled, and the earth beneath my boots warmed. Like the heartbeat of something vast and buried, my knees buckled. I fell to the ground, hands pressed against the soil, and the visions came. Flashes, fires I'd helped fight, traps I'd disarmed, animals I'd held as they drew their last breath, but also the mistakes, the silence, the time I let politics win over truth, the day I walked away from the claw marks in 1991. Then came stillness. And from that stillness, a single thought, not my own, but clear as thunder. You remember now. When I opened my eyes, the creature was gone. The air was lighter. The birds sang again. But I wasn't the same. Something inside me had shifted. Not broken, but released. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a guardian. I felt like I belonged. I made my way back to the cabin as the sky turned a soft kind of gold, like the forest itself had exhaled. The walk was slower this time, not because I was tired, but because I finally understood what it meant to walk with the land, not just through it. Thomas was still on his porch when I pulled in. He didn't speak, just nodded. He knew. We sat in silence for a while. Then I said, "It didn't want blood. It wanted memory. It wanted truth." He smiled. "Now you carry it." The next few weeks, I pulled out the old maps, the patrol logs, the dusty journals of rangers long gone. I started writing every sighting, every sound, every feeling I'd ever buried. I wasn't trying to convince anyone. I was trying to leave a trail. Not for me, for whoever came next. One afternoon, a young intern named Caleb came by to ask about trail boundaries. Bright-eyed, eager, full of questions. Instead of handing him a GPS map, I gave him the charcoal sketch. He looked at it, puzzled. "Is this real?" I nodded. "Real enough to make you listen. That's what matters. Because some things aren't meant to be solved. They're meant to be remembered. And that's how the wild survives. Not through fences, but through stories." Fall came early that year. The wind carried the smell of pine and old smoke, and the trees blazed in copper and crimson, like the mountains themselves were burning away the past. I knew what it meant. Some endings don't come with thunder. They arrive like a whisper. I handed in my last report to the ranger station the following week, typed on yellowing paper, clipped with a rusted pin. Nobody asked questions. They just shook my hand, some with tears in their eyes, like they could feel what I wasn't saying. I didn't need a ceremony. The land had already given me mine. Instead, I returned to that cottonwood grove one last time. The circle of antlers had collapsed. The stone was gone, but the air still remembered. I knelt, pressed my palm to the ground, and whispered, "Thank you for trusting me." Then I stood, turned, walked away. Back at the cabin, I boxed up my field journals and left them for Caleb. No instructions, just a note. When the silence calls, follow it. Now I spend most mornings on the porch, watching the ridge line through steam, rising from a tin mug. Not waiting, for I've already seen what I needed to. I didn't tame the wild, but I listened to it, and sometimes that's all it ever asked. It's been 5 years since Emmett Granger hung up his boots. I still remember the last time I saw him, rocking gently on that old porch chair, steam curling from his mug, eyes fixed on the ridge like he was still on patrol. He didn't say much. He never did. But the silence around him always said plenty. After he passed, I found the box he'd left in the cabin. Journals, sketches, maps drawn by hand, marked with places that didn't exist on any official chart. And tucked between the pages was the sketch, the eyes, the shadow, the truth. I took over his route the following spring. At first, I kept expecting to hear his voice on the radio. Then I realized he never truly left. He became part of the land he gave everything to. Last week, I returned to the cottonwood grove. The antlers were gone, but a new sapling had grown where the circle once stood, tall, straight, strong. I placed one of his old patrol pins at its base. A wind passed through the trees. Just a breeze, maybe, but it felt like a nod. So I keep walking these trails, not just to protect, but to remember, because stories like Emmett's don't fade. They root themselves in the wild. And every time the forest goes still, I stop, and I listen, just like he taught me. At its heart, the story of Emmett Granger reminds us that true legacy isn't built from grand gestures. It's formed through quiet devotion, deep listening, and a lifelong respect for the world beyond ourselves. In an age where noise and speed dominate, Emmett's journey teaches us the value of stillness and presence. He didn't try to conquer the wilderness. He allowed it to teach him. And in return, the land trusted him with its oldest truths. For older audiences, this message carries profound weight, that even in our later years, our lives can hold purpose. Not through authority or strength, but through wisdom, humility, and the stories we choose to pass on. Emmett's choice to step back, reflect, and then pass the torch to a younger generation is a powerful reminder that letting go is not the end, but often the beginning of something lasting. It challenges us to ask, what are we leaving behind? Not just in things, but in values, in memory, in spirit, because the truest guardians are not those who hold on tightly, but those who know when to pass the trail map and say, "It's your turn now."